Good afternoon. It's a beautiful day in Worcestershire and the River Severn is looking absolutely fantastic on this fine day. Definitely in Worcestershire, definitely haven't escaped for a couple of days. Right, whilst I was sat on the train, you know those trains that go in the sky and then take you somewhere hot. Whilst I was sat on the train, I organised all my notes on my phone and I found some letters that had been written to me that I hadn't shared with you, and I wanted to share some with you. So I'm going to work my way through some letters whilst I'm here in Worcestershire. Anyway, I'm calling this one A Little Balance, because it's someone that wants to give me a little bit of balance. Hi Geoff, you probably won't read this, but if you do take the time, then thanks in advance. I like your channel, but I'm a bit worried that the pain of the tooth has just upset your judgment a little bit. This was written to me when I had toothache, and it's quite funny because everybody's going to be walking past as we make this video, but I'm going to stumble on through it anyway. I'm writing to suggest who the them is that are pushing the anti-private vehicle angle that you proposed in your apology video today. This is when I apologised for falling for the anti-EV movement because it was actually a ploy to destroy the car industry in its entirety. I think my explanation is more credible than most that I've heard or read about, and perhaps more worrying. And before I get into it, I should just say that I'm ambivalent about EVs. I drive a 15-year-old Audi A6 and I have a BMW 1250 RT motorbike. I am by no means a petrol head, but I do like the freedom to go where I want and when I want. I'd be happy with either form of propulsion as long as it's practical and affordable. Now, in today's apology video, you proposed the idea that there's a worldwide plot to get all private motor vehicles off the road and stick us all on public transport. So let's unpick that a bit. Who is they that are running this plan? Who is the they that are running this plan? And what are the options? Is it the UK politicians? Likely not. I think we can all agree the long-term planning in UK government isn't a strong point. Is it the Chinese? A more credible bet, but they seem to be making more EVs than anyone, and coming from a position of low car ownership 30 years ago, they were in a very good position to avoid wasting the time on allowing any personal motor vehicle ownership and jump straight to the end game that you proposed. But as far as I can see, this is not happening. Is it the European Parliament? Yes, they'd probably like to crush us post-Brexit to keep the remaining countries in line, but since they have the likes of BMW, VW Audi Group and Renault, etc. contributing to their manufacturing base, then they would be taking a big hit to achieve this fiendish plan. That leaves the super elite, that shadowy cabal that get the blame for everything any delusional conspiracy theorist dreams up. The conclusion is, I can't see a suspect that would gain from this, and indeed, what would they gain? It's quite warm here in Worcestershire, which is why blokes are walking around with their tops off. Well, let's look at that again. Let's think about it another way and follow the money. Who gains by removing private cars from the roads? Looking at the UK, the motor vehicle supply chain produces jobs. It generates NICs and income tax and avoids paying benefits. Ditto for the fuel supply chain and the insurance industry and the servicing supply chain, and it goes on. Road fund licenses generate tax revenue, congestion charges generate tax revenue, and speeding and parking fines do the same, and road tolls, and if we go to pay per mile, then even more revenue. If we can remain objective, then it seems sensible to assume that there must be some gain to outweigh these losses, and it's a lot of effort over a long period, so the gain must be significant. So, what is the gain? Is it ticket revenue from public transport? I can't buy that entirely, and here's why. We've got a pretty shoddy public transport system in the UK, and if we're all steered towards using it, then there's going to have to be some significant capacity increases. That's going to mean a massive amount of engineering works, adding more lines to railways, and maybe even entirely new routes. Incidentally, if the big push is toward a joined-up railway network, then why was HS2 cancelled? That all seems very far-fetched given the current laid-back attitude the government has to public transport, although I do wonder about the £2 bus promotion, rolled out with very little fanfare, and it's been going for ages. Who's paying for that then? And we're generally quiescent, the population here in the UK. We don't go out and demonstrate, we more chunter under our breath because we've got it pretty good overall. Great in the UK. But if we have to start trudging to the bus stop or railway station in the cold and queue for a bus, etc., we're going to get annoyed very quickly and start taking a leave from the Frenchies book and protesting and voting for change. At the moment, I can't see the dots, let alone join them. I agree that the EV crowd appear to be pushing on with almost religious belief that some amazing scientific breakthrough will arise to increase energy density and fix battery chemistry to stop them spontaneously combusting. And this despite the challenges for materials, recycling, repairing, insuring, etc, etc. And I agree that the penalty tariff the government are putting on car manufacturers for failing to achieve the target EV units sold per year is a big incentive for car makers to follow that line. So I can kind of see where you're coming from with the apology video, but without pointing a finger at who is they, who is them, you run the risk of sounding like a cuckoo conspiracy theorist. Wouldn't be the first time that I've been accused of being one of those. Alternative theory, the writer proposes. Yes, since you ask. Think about situations where everyone just follows orders or no one blows a whistle. Think of Nazi Germany or more recently the post office scandal. Bear with me, I know it sounds like a crazy link to those two, but in a situation where everyone does what they're told, nobody inquires too much, everyone is in fear for their job, everything is cushy, so why rock the boat? Everyone knows there's a great big thing that we need to collectively struggle to vanquish and sacrifices must be made, etc. This is my alternative, and it's the climate change monster. It's something that everyone knows enough about to perceive it as bad, so anything that is deemed to stop it is good and must be done. Conveniently, those things that must be done are very far off. If they were more acute, like that pain where your tooth was, then they would be stark and obvious. But because they're far off and so they are somebody else's problem, we don't expect to have to do anything about them right now. It's a kind of psychosis. The dictionary says a severe mental health condition in which thought and emotions are so affected that contact is lost with external reality. Psychosis. Brought on by a threat that we're told about every day, but with no meaningful and evident activity going on toward a solution. Add to that the issue that to raise dissent or question something like this existential threat leads to being shouted down by the mob or cancelled. Note, I am not a climate change denier, but I'd like a bit more discourse from both sides of the public arena. So, what I think is there is no them who are orchestrating the mess that EVs represent. It is in fact a collective feeling that something needs to be done, and since EVs are at least a little bit doable, then if we push EVs we might get something done. The politicians can say that they've incentivized EV production and the buyers can say they've done their bit because they could afford to, despite them being a dead-end technology at our current practical science limitations. I'll stop now as you probably gave up reading this ages ago. I do like your videos, keep up the good work, but veer away from the QAnon stuff, mate. Regards. P.S. You'll probably be moaning about the cost of dentistry next. No, I gave up making videos about dentistry, but I have been doing a lot of videos moaning about the weather, and then I gave up on that as well and came here on a flying train. What do you think? I mean, yeah, when we talk about this stuff, it's quite hard to pin down who them and they are, or they are doing this or they are doing that. But there are a lot of non-elected, non-government organisations like the World Health Organization and like the World Economic Forum and C40 Cities and all of those guys that are involved in pushing this agenda, and they must have a reason for doing that. Quite what that reason is, I'm not completely sure. But it seems to me like there absolutely is a war on the motorist, and we are being forced to get out of our cars. And maybe if we do get out of our cars and walk more, we might lose a bit of weight. Could be a good thing. No, seriously though, I appreciate the email saying that we're not quite sure who it is that's pushing the agenda, but the fact of the matter is there absolutely is an agenda to get us out of our cars, and we can't necessarily pin where that is coming from. But if you follow the money and you follow all of these three-letter NGO organizations, you do kind of end up back on the same sort of people. As to why, the only thing that I've really got on that, and maybe this needs to be another video, is maybe the end of the world has already come. Maybe we've already reached the end of capitalism. Maybe the grand solar minimum is coming, and maybe the sun is going to not burn as hot, and maybe we are all going to melt or freeze or burn or die. And what they're trying to do is get everybody controlled in nice tight pens, regulated and, you know, epically controlled, so that when this big cataclysm happens, whether it's the end of capitalism or indeed it's the grand solar minimum or an asteroid or whatever it might be, when that happens, they'll have complete control. Thank you for watching. I thought she was going to come and ask me about parking then, and ask me whether it's okay to park here, which would have been awkward because I've no idea.